Good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Elliott. I am the design director for Simply Secure. Simply Secure is a US-based nonprofit with an educational mission. And everyone here in this audience is part of our target group, people that we want to educate to make better decisions about security, privacy, and ethics. So whether you're coming from a technical development background, a business background, or a design background, I hope there's something in here that helps you. The number one point that I want to make is this. You don't have to be a cryptographer to work in security. Cybersecurity has such a terrible brand image. It's very cyber, threat, down, military, attack. The entire language, the color palette, the people who are naturally drawn to it have a message that is not necessarily inclusive. And what I would like to encourage you all to do is to think about, as designers, as practitioners, as people with a human-centered focus, how you can reframe security from the language of no, thou shalt not install, fail, warning, into the language of yes, and caring for other people, thinking about security and privacy and ethics as a form of caring for others. Part of what that means is making a shift from the language of no, you may not install this or download this, into yes. This is what our organization, our company, our brand stands for in terms of building a responsible relationship with the people who use our products and services. So there are kind of three parts to this express talk, and I'm going to start off with just understanding some of the risks to end users. So in security, we speak about threat modeling. And threat modeling is basically, who are you worried about having your information? So right now, there's general agreement that hackers are bad, perhaps in some stereotypically cliched ways that aren't necessarily helpful or realistic. Governments and companies are both causes for concern. And I also just want to acknowledge that stalkers is actually a threat model that I don't think gets enough attention. There's a robust Android spyware market. This is a serious problem for victims of domestic and gender-based violence. But the focus of where I think a lot of the conversation is around governments and companies having our information. So I'm an American that moved from San Francisco to Berlin, Germany, a couple of years ago. And I have found that in general, the people of the United States in general, and the kind of Silicon Valley in particular, have strong positive feelings about companies as forces for good in the world that can protect people, potentially standing up to governments. And in Germany, that's kind of exactly the opposite. There's a lot of strong positive feelings towards the government as a protector of people, and skepticism or hostility towards companies and their overreach. So, I mean, in terms of the threat models you're working with, it probably depends on your context. But I want to just say that this dichotomy, this kind of cultural diversion, is not new. There's a misconception that all of this just kind of happened since President Trump was elected to run the United States. But this is just a screenshot from TechCrunch talking about how in 2014, under the Obama administration, Twitter was taking kind of a stance against what they considered to be governmental overreach. So there's a history there that certainly goes back even beyond 2014, but governments, companies, that's all part of the picture. So two specific examples of threats. I picked this one because I really care about cities. I'm very concerned about fossil fuel dependency, and I see a lot of really exciting design opportunities in smart cities and mobility. So my point here is not to shame the companies that do bicycle sharing. This is a photo from in Berlin near my office. Berlin is filling up with these shared bikes that are controlled by apps. Two of them are Bike and Mobike. So it happens that Bike is a local Berlin company, and Mobike is an import from China. And they have some different app permissions. In the Android App Store, you can anyone can go and view what the permissions the app asks for are. They don't make it easy, but that feature is there. And most people who are renting a bike with an app on their cell phone are pretty clear that they're being tracked. That's the whole premise of how the theft prevention works. They obviously know that the camera is working as well. You usually scan a QR code to check out the bike. But there's a lot of other stuff going on here, everything from transferring data, preventing the phone from sleeping, deleting media off your storage, controlling the flashlight. And there may be really good reasons for all of these things, but it's not clear. You're asked to consent to terms and service, which in the case of Mobike actually include not posting defamatory content online. So it begs the question, what are we willing to agree to in these kind of public-private partnerships around smart cities? Who is getting our data? And just a kind of second example, I'm also very excited about a lot of the playfulness and fun of the maker community in the Internet of Things space. But I also get a certain kind of pleasure from things like the Twitter account, Internet of Shit, that spends a lot of time just mocking things that aren't super well thought out. So the iKettle is a real product that you can buy. It's for sale in Germany on Amazon for 114 euros. And it's a kettle that you control with an app on your phone. So this is one example of many, and my point is not to shame this design team, it's to point out a systematic problem. Security researchers were very easily able to kind of hack the system, with the result that they were able to indicate who in this part of London has an iKettle, dropping actual pins on the map for where they are. So if you have an iKettle, this means that you are known as having a smartphone, enough disposable income to spend more than 100 euros on a way to boil water, and you don't actually understand security, and you live there. So that could be information that a number of physical thieves, the kind of cartoon bad guys with the sacks of all your electronics, may want to know. And I really am putting this up to make the point that too much of this conversation around kind of security is around blaming individuals and saying, well, dummy, what did you expect? Just don't buy a toaster or use rental bicycles or do this stuff. And that is not good enough. That is not good enough because there is a social cost, a societal cost to insecurity. So IoT botnets, like the Mirai botnet, are a really serious pressing problem, and it is unacceptable for people to be ambivalent about the security of their devices, because the router in your house, or the baby camera, or the toaster, or the kettle could actually be weaponized against other people. So security researcher Brian Krebs did a bunch of research on the Mirai botnet. We've also seen botnets taking down the UK health services. But basically, this guy worked out that the cost to protect yourself against this is between $150,000 and $200,000 a year. That is the money that he felt like he would need to pay in order to secure his website as an independent journalist against this kind of attack. And the implications of that are really shocking. That means that someone who can direct a botnet to take anything offline. So if you, for example, like to vote, this is a potential threat to your ability to get information about how your democracy is working. If you are a highly motivated entrepreneur and your thing is up on Product Hunt and you're about to get all eyes on your company and you're about to make it, and you are suddenly DDoS by this botnet that takes your website offline, you're not going to get a chance to get that spotlight again. And the responsibility can't lie with individual people and their decisions to buy certain kinds of toasters. We need bigger decisions and conversations around how to secure things. I think the answer to how to secure things is leading through design. I'm going to show a couple of examples of what I think good looks like and some provocations about what we as UX designers can be thinking about to do better for the future. So TunnelBear is a VPN service based in Canada. And I put this up here because I think that their content strategy and branding of this is just wonderful. The words VPN, the letters VPN, virtual private network, never appear. You don't need to know what that is. This is the opposite of the cyber threat, secure your defenses with a military-grade VPN. This is very approachable and human. There's a bear chewing through a camera cable, big paw blocking the face. It's building a kind of relationship based on a positive thing, on a yes thing that pulls people towards them. Similarly, Slack is a group messaging tool that I spend a lot of time in, and I think that their writing and their micro copy is really successful in building a positive relationship with people. And this dialog box with the rooster says, by using a channel, you're about to notify 63 people in 7 time zones. Are you sure? And from a kind of a specific point of view, that's an error. That's interrupting my flow with a dialog box that I need to deal with in some way. But it actually makes me feel like Slack has my back, and they're preventing me from embarrassing myself by sending an alert. And that makes me feel good as a user about Slack. But I also want to point out there's some interesting security implications to some of Slack's choices. I mean, Slack is not a secure messenger. I'm not recommending it in that context at all. But in the bottom in the green, it says, custom Slack bot responses occur in channels and conversations, but not in direct messages with other team members. That would be rude. And that would be rude, I think, is really interesting. So Slackbot is a bot that listens to all of the conversations. And in many of the groups I'm part of, there's a culture where if someone types Friday, then, for example, Slackbot can produce a GIF that says Friday. And you have the sense that Slackbot is always listening along. But if I'm in a direct message one-to-one and I type Friday, that doesn't happen. That creates an illusion that Slackbot isn't listening in my direct messages. But that's not actually accurate. Slack is a proprietary messaging platform. Of course Slackbot is listening. They have access to all of that stuff. It's not that they're not listening, it's that they're not giving the feedback that the messages are being listened to. And that's an example of a provocation I'd like us to all kind of think about and how we can clearly communicate that. So, these are some locks of the Chinese mobile web, which I'm including because that's a very specific context in China, where if you think about the spectrum of who has access to your information, it's not necessarily clear if you come from outside China what these locks mean. And I'm not interested in adding more locks to things as a badge of security. As a designer, I can make 2 UI elements for one is an open lock, the second is a lock that clicks shut, and nothing happened in the system other than replacing one image with another. The answer isn't more locks. This is one of the things that I think is a kind of answer that I would like to see more of. These screenshots show messages. In the iPhone, you get a choice of, not a choice, you get either green text bubbles or blue text bubbles, depending on if your messaging partner is also using an iPhone, that's blue bubbles, or if they're on something else, probably Android, it's green bubbles. Very simple, lightweight, limited color palette. Here I understand something about a person, far away, potentially on the other side of the world, only based on their phone number. They also use some very limited words, such as read and delivered. Very simple, not so many characters, subtle gray. That works all around the world. It doesn't matter what platform they're on. It doesn't matter who their mobile phone carrier is. It doesn't matter if it's Wi-Fi. I understand that system. And I'm putting this forward as an example of how UX design can change behavior. On the far right, you see WhatsApp. And many WhatsApp groups use the convention that after someone sees a message, you get a check mark for a read receipt. And that has changed my behavior in very, very specific ways. So I'm a member of a number of WhatsApp groups, and when I get that WhatsApp alert on my home screen, I am extremely careful to back away and not touch it. I do not want that check mark next to my name, because then I'm being rude for not responding more quickly if people somehow saw that I saw it. So as long as I don't touch it, I have a little bit of plausible deniability about what an appropriate response time is. And I think that is an example of how the system, through a very simple, lightweight UX decision, is changing behavior in a dialogue. And that's completely different than if a company could create a policy that all our messaging software will issue read receipts, or a government could require all messaging apps to issue read receipts. But if the way that you get to the read receipt is to long press on the sender's name, and then go to the message menu, and then type in message ID equals 0036, and then see status equals 0 or status equals 1, that may fulfill the requirement of issuing a read receipt, but it won't change behavior. So that's a hard problem that works kind of across the software stack, from infrastructure to OS to app. And I would like us to think about kind of more ways to do that for this connected world. But I'm going to leave you with just a couple of bits of very small practical advice to try to fight off a sense of security nihilism, that the problems are too big and too hard. Because there's actually a number of very small things that you can do on your teams to make bits of difference and start thinking about what kind of future you'd like to design for. So phishing is one kind of security attack. It's impersonating somebody and getting them to enter their credentials so that you can take them for a devious purpose, like usernames or credit card details. And design is actually a really underrated part of those defenses. I'm including kind of two screenshots from the Google Apps ecosystem here. I'm in the process of divesting my personal life and business from Google, but it's a long and difficult process. So for the moment, I'm actually a paid customer. And I get these cheery, very businessy emails about boosting your productivity with G Suite Business. And I'm still not clear on G Suite and Drive and Docs, but no matter. It speaks to me in very specific language. However, on the right, I see an error message in Chrome that deals with snap, and this very kind of hacker playfulness. And I know why. I've been using Chrome for years. But this juxtaposition means that I don't understand how Google talks to me. What is their voice? What is their tone? And that makes it difficult for me to understand if a communication from Google is fraudulent or not. We know there have been examples, for example, in the United States, staffers of one of the political parties were phished, and their account was compromised. And I would like to say that design could have played a stronger role in helping people understand if a communication is legitimately from Google or not. And one additional example that is often overlooked, the URL structure has an implication of if something is legitimate or not. So a hypothetical Berlin streetwear company, an extra L in LA, decisions about where to structure the payment, Easy Pay, Berlin streetwear, these garbage links we all get in our emails. These are decisions that involve multiple stakeholders and their implications for security. So my kind of closing advice is think about using a style guide for words, for colors, how to be consistent all around the world. And I think that that's what's going to get us from no, you can't touch this, no, you can't do this, into the world of yes, and caring for other people and building trust. So at Simply Secure, we have a bunch more resources. That was a very quick talk, but I welcome the chance to keep going with you all. This is my real contact information. Please reach out. I'm happy to keep the conversation going. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So you pointed out some of the risks and some of the consequences of not getting these things right, and you suggested some ways in which we can design better. But will it really happen unless, users and stakeholders care? How can I make everyone care about this?
I mean, I hope that we're at what Cory Doctorow, science fiction writer, has called peak indifference to surveillance. I hope that we're at peak indifference and things are going to get better. I see changes like these upcoming GDPR changes as a potential catalyst for businesses to reimagine the customer contract, and I hope we see change.
Okay, but if we look at end users, seem so witlessly willing to give away their data. Can we change their attitudes?
I think design has been effective at getting people to count their steps and floss their teeth and save for retirement and do a lot of things that we considered boring or off-putting. And I would hope that design can encourage people to care and make some behavior changes in the security arena as well.
Okay. So as designers, we can take some kind of responsibility, and you have some great suggestions. And you told us to kind of bear lots of things in mind, and there's some resources. But tomorrow, as I go back into a project, how can I start doing this?
Design with a troll persona in mind. That's something Brandon Harris has done. Designing for evil. Assume misuse. And think about how your system can be weaponized. That's just not something that people have given enough time and attention to. And I think at this point in 2018, it's really not acceptable to say, I had no idea this could be misused. I think we all as a society are aware that kind of anything can be misused. And it's not necessarily obvious how to change your product, but starting the conversation, how can this be used to abuse others? What are the negative consequences of taking this information? Like, what is our response plan when something happens?
That's great. And I look forward to doing the research on the troll persona. That'll be fun. How did you get into this? How did this become important to you, this topic?
Well, I came up through user experience research, and it was something of a midlife crisis or a cultural crisis when I realized that a lot of my very well-intentioned work about understanding kind of naturalistic human behavior was actually being weaponized in the sense of becoming part of the advertising surveillance industry. And I really didn't see that coming. I mean, so you can call me also personally naive, but I really believed that if we did work on both sides of the screen, small scale, in person, qualitative research to understand how people are really thinking aloud and doing this, combined with some kind of sensitive metrics about how things work at scale, we would be able to design better technology that met people's needs. And I'm horrified to see the ways in which that's been perverted, and specifically around things like journalism, advertising, page revenue, and I'm trying to make a small difference towards reframing that conversation.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And we'd like to give you a small gift. Since we're in Sweden, you can rest assured it's exactly the same as all the other gifts.
Thank you very much.
Amy
Appreciate
Elliott.
it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks.
Rebecca will show you where to go.
Great.